Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD, bodybuilder, back with another video. So I got a question on my last video from Corandis R asking about the pros and cons of cardio. And that's what today's video is going to be on. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about cardio, whether you should use it to lose weight, whether it kills your gains, and how much you should be doing in general. So I polled you guys earlier on my community tab, and 50% of you said you do 0 hours of cardio. So how much cardio should you really be aiming for? We'll answer that today. Quick outline, we're going to talk about cardio for health, we'll talk about the pros and cons, and then we'll go over some recommendations for using cardio for weight loss. So if that sounds good to you, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and let's get right into it. So before we jump into the bodybuilding part, talking about losing weight and building muscle, first I need to give you the party line on cardio for health right now. We're currently recommending 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity per week. Now, what defines cardio? We generally refer to cardio to an activity that gets your heart rate up over a sustained period of at least 10 minutes. So an example of how you might break this down would be 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. I think the first question I had was whether weight training actually counts for cardio. And I think it depends on what exercises you're using, how hard you're training, and whether you're actually getting your heart rate up continuously over that time. Okay, so now that we've gotten our health recommendations out of the way, let's talk about the pros and cons of cardio for weight loss. Now to start off, I want to emphasize that what really drives weight loss is a caloric deficit. So in addition to restricting the number of calories you take in through food, cardio is just another way of getting into that deficit. Now in terms of the pros for using cardio for weight loss, it may help you reduce your appetite. Some people find that when they're more active, they end up eating less overall. So you might actually get this 2-for-1 effect where you're eating less and you're expending more calories. The other pro of cardio is that it allows you to eat more. Now for some people, when they reach a certain level of dieting, their calories are so restricted that clamping down on calories even more causes them to have really low energy throughout the day. So instead of slashing calories even lower, they would rather add in some cardio. Now in terms of cons of cardio for weight loss, in the inverse of our first point here, it may disproportionately increase appetite for some people. In other words, introducing cardio sessions leads them to be a lot more hungry than they otherwise would. And it can actually make it harder for those people to stay in a deficit. And the other disadvantage here is that results are unpredictable with cardio. For most people, adding in more cardio doesn't lead to weight loss in a linear fashion because the body gets more efficient at using calories for that same activity. All right, so now that we've talked about cardio for weight loss, let's talk about cardio for muscle growth. Now in terms of advantages for cardio, I'll say that some conditioning will actually help you get in more training volume. This applies more so in the extreme case, but if you're very unfit, you might spend so much time out of breath in between sets that you could actually do more sets if you were able to take shorter rest periods in between, which does require some cardiovascular conditioning. The stereotypical example of this would be the very unfit powerlifter who does one set of squats and needs 10 minutes to recover. Now in terms of cons of cardio, in general, it's time consuming. As you know, I'm huge on efficiency, so I had to throw this one in there. Another con is that it may impede recovery. Now I put an asterisk beside this because it depends on how much you're training already. Basically, your body has a finite pool of resources that it can use for recovery. These resources are what goes in after your hypertrophy workouts to repair damaged muscle and actually build new tissue. Now cardio does impose a recovery cost that will take away some of those resources to use to recover from the cardio itself. But this only becomes an issue if you're actually training close to the threshold to which you can actually recover from. I think for most people, if they're training 3 days per week or less, recovery isn't going to be a big issue. Beyond that, it's hard to say, it depends on the person, but if you're finding that you're having trouble recovering from your training already, that you have lots of aches and pains, or if training quality goes down when you add in cardio, then it could be a problem. Now the last con of cardio is that it does interfere with hypertrophy if overused. A simple way to think about this is that your body can't be the best endurance athlete and the best hypertrophy athlete at the same time. And if you look at endurance athletes, you'll notice that they have relatively lower muscle mass than strength athletes. Now the actual mechanisms for the interference between cardio and muscle growth are fairly complex, but a few of the points are: first, you're biasing your fiber types towards more slow twitch fibers. Slow twitch fibers are the ones that are best for endurance. And if you spend a lot of time doing endurance training, your body is going to switch its fiber composition to suit the activity that you're training for. The problem with slow twitch fibers is they have less potential for growth. Other mechanisms for this interference include cellular pathway signaling and enzyme concentrations. To put it simply, doing a lot of cardio will signal to your body to prioritize endurance adaptations rather than strength and hypertrophy adaptations. Alright, so now that we've discussed some of the pros and cons of cardio, let's give you my recommendations. Now, in terms of my recommendation on using cardio for health, I would recommend trying to get at least 150 minutes per week. Something moderate like a brisk walk is going to be fine. From a pure health perspective, if that's your only goal, doing more cardio is better to a certain extent. So being more active is good if you can, but you don't need to be a marathon runner to be healthy. Now, in terms of weight loss, it really comes down to personal preference as to whether you use primarily calorie restriction or cardio or both. What really matters is calories in versus calories out. So I would recommend that you use it if it helps you create a deficit. Just understand that cardio doesn't have any magical effects for fat loss. And in terms of optimizing muscle growth, I would actually recommend avoiding long, intense cardio sessions. Cardio will interfere with hypertrophy, especially if you do a lot of it or if you do it for a sustained high intensity. I don't think there's any issue with doing 30 minutes of brisk walking, but say if you're going for hard hour-long runs, you're going to interfere with the process of hypertrophy and you're going to impose a recovery cost, which might reduce the amount of productive volume that you're able to accumulate. So at some point you need to decide on your priorities. You're not going to be the best bodybuilder and long distance runner at the same time. Speaking of that, I used to be a runner myself. I was a varsity track athlete for my university. After I left the team, I went through this phase when I was trying to bodybuild and keep up my running. And needless to say, you know which one I chose. Alright, so just to summarize here, you should be really trying to stay active for health. In terms of weight loss, it comes down to personal preference. Weigh the pros and cons, and do what helps you create that caloric deficit the best overall. But you should limit cardio to some extent if your main goal is hypertrophy. That's all for now, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit like and leave me a comment below. I'm really good about answering every single one of my comments, so you'll definitely hear back from me. In particular, how much cardio do you do? Let me know below. Comment of the week is from Einan. He's been a consistent supporter of my channel since the beginning. Thanks, man. Appreciate the support. Now, if you're serious about losing fat, check out my Basics of Dieting series. It's a playlist with some really good videos where I walk you through step by step how to create a caloric deficit, some behavioral strategies that will make it easier, what rate you should be losing weight at, and more. If you haven't already, hit subscribe and make sure you hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos.